Over 100,000 chemicals are registered in the EU, of which 30,000 70,000 are used daily, most of them ending up in the ocean. Contaminants of emerging concern comprise a vast array of substances that are not necessarily new, but have recently been detected at concentrations significantly higher than expected, potentially posing adverse effects on the marine environment and human health. Besides, they are still not well characterized and are not currently regulated. There is an urgent need to assess the concentration and impact of these in the ocean, along with climate change and the loss of biodiversity, collectively known as the Triple Planetary Crisis. OneBlue, coordinated by CSIC, brings 18 institutions together. Research groups from 11 European countries, involving more than 100 researchers from different fields. 9 sampling campaigns will be carried out aboard 5 research vessels to study the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans and the Mediterranean Sea. Samples of seawater at different depths, soil and biota will be collected, along with measurements of psychochemical parameters. Additionally, samples from a biobank of marine species from incidental entanglements will also be investigated. More than 800 samples will be studied using advanced chemical analysis, state-of-the-art ecotoxicological bioassays, effect-directed analysis, and metagenomics to establish the levels and effects of emerging contaminants. A CEC marine database will host new data generated in OneBlue and collect previous data developed under the FAIR principles. OneBlue will develop new methodologies based on marine species, which, combined with chemical analysis, will be used to establish tire effect-based monitoring approaches for ocean research. OneBlue will also provide new technologies, such as an ultrasonic actuator for microplastic and nanoplastic online sampling and sample enrichment, a remote autonomous sensor based on enrichment by covalent organic frameworks, and surface-enhanced Raman scattering for online assessment of antibiotic residues. One of the projects step forward is to study the combined effects of emerging contamination and climate change. These studies will be carried out in marine meso and microcosms under controlled conditions. The effects of mixtures of contaminants will be studied under different conditions of temperature, salinity, and acidification to assess the impacts of emerging contamination in conditions modeling the future effects of climate change. The results of OneBlue will provide improved and consistent knowledge, available data, new technologies for the study of emerging contamination in the ocean, new approaches for sampling and remote sensing, a decision support system for assessing and forecasting the combined effects of climate change and contamination, the main drivers of what is known as the Triple Planetary Crisis, and the necessary impact on researchers and the scientific community, policymakers, coastal authorities, regulators, marine conventions, and society in general to protect the ocean. Finally, OneBlue will provide increased knowledge about levels and effects of contaminants of emerging concern, new technologies, advanced models, and safety guidelines and recommendations to move toward achieving clean, unpolluted oceans and seas.
Okay, so I got a green light from our wonderful attitude that is always supporting us in this kind of events. So I'm just gonna start first of all welcoming everyone and wishing a really good morning to all the attendees to this webinar to the One Blue Policy Recommendations and EU Marine Regulation Review webinar. We are holding this event as a partner event of the 2025 EU Green Week, gathering one more year into this initiative that brings together policymakers, businesses, leading environmentalists, and other interested parties from across Europe and the world regarding climate protection. Let me remind you that today we will review the current EU marine regulatory framework, and also different European projects will present their policy briefs and recommendations to influence future marine legislation. In addition, we will also host representatives of European projects that have organized events in the framework of the European Green Week, and they will tell us their experience in this regard. Before we begin with the webinar, I would like to remind you the structure of this event to ensure clarity and understanding of how the event will develop. The session will be welcomed by Ana Bobo, Senior Policy Officer of the C2 Unit of the European Commission at the Director General for Environments, who will deliver an institutional address offering key insights into the EU's current priorities for marine environmental protection and sustainability. Afterwards, we will have Maria Marta Barroso Quiroga, Chemical Engineering Advisor at the Foundation, that will present the latest updates and review EU marine legislation regarding the work made in OneBlue around this topic. Then we will have our EU Green Week panel with two interventions. First, we will have Robert van Stingelen, President of the European Sustainable Phosphorus Platform and representative from the Upcycle project, that will explain briefly the main conclusions from the ESPP workshop that took place from 10th to 12th of June in Bergen, Norway. And then we'll have Davide Poletto, Executive Director of the Venice Lagoon Free Project and representative of the Circular 2.0 and Revenues Project, that will share the main conclusions of the Marine Litter Monitoring, Removal and Blue Circular Economy workshop celebrated in Venice on June 1st. For the following panel, we will showcase the work of other EU-funded initiatives that are actively contributing to sustainable policy making and marine protection from different perspectives. Chris Bowler, Director of Research at the French National Center for Scientific Research and part of the Blue Remediomics project, will present the results concerning the disclosure of the origin of genetic resources on which patent applications are based on WIPO treaty and BBNG agreement. Priscilla Doran, Vice President of the Executive Council of Nucleo and part of Authors Project, will explain how the project seeks to integrate citizen science into educational frameworks. And we will have also Lisa Waldenberger, Scientific Project Assistant at the University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences of Vienna, which is partner of the EcoDali project. In this case, Ms. Waldenberger will explain the recommendations for the proper implementation of nature-based solutions. And last but not least, we will have Juan Manuel Revuelta, CEO of the Finola Foundation, that will give a brief explanation on the EU funding opportunities regarding ocean protection. Just to remind you before we start that you'll be able to make questions at the end of each panel. So in case you got questions during the intervention of one of our panelists, I kindly ask you to keep them for the end of each panel so we can go ahead and we can keep on with our schedule. And now I think I have already talked enough, so I'm gonna give the word to our first speaker, to Ms. Ana Bobo, Senior Policy Officer of the C2 Unit of the Marine Environment and Clean Water Services Unit at the European Commission. So, Ms. Bobo, thank you very much for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, John. I hope you can all hear me properly. So I did prepare a few slides for this introductory session, so I'll share my screen with you. So thanks again. Indeed, I work as a Senior Policy Officer in DG Environment in the unit dealing with marine environment protection. My head of unit, Paula Duarte, asked me to replace her in this seminar to give you an introduction. I thought about quickly introducing the policy landscape around marine protection, and in particular the recently adopted Water Resilience Strategy and the Ocean Pact, which will highly influence what we're doing in the Commission, taking forward on regulation on marine environment protection. So indeed, the EU has a very ambitious framework on the protection of the marine environment, and this ranges from environmental legislation, such as the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, to other water and nature legislation, including also the recent nature restoration regulation. However, our work doesn't stop there, because when we look at sectoral legislation and policies such as fisheries, maritime, spatial planning, maritime transport, tourism, as well as our international obligations, the protection of the marine environment is a common thread that runs through all of these policies. And in doing so, we rely on taking what we call an ecosystem-based approach, where we respect the limits, the boundaries of marine ecosystems for planning human activities which impact ecosystems, marine ecosystems. So many of these pieces of legislation have been, however, developed separately, and there is really some scope to pull all these policies together into a more holistic framework. We need to do this in order to connect the dots in a more coherent and comprehensive way. As you know, unsustainable fisheries threaten marine biodiversity and its habitats. Pollution coming from maritime transport is doing the same as many of the other human activities, both on land and at sea, and that in one way or another affects our seas and ocean. And here comes the interplay with the two strategies on which I'd like to talk a little bit more today. One is the recently adopted Water Resilience Strategy, and the other the Ocean Pact. I will try to highlight their relevance for moving marine protection regulations forward. So starting with the Water Resilience Strategy, this was adopted on the 4th of June, so quite recently. You see the reference here. The Water Resilience Strategy aims to restore and protect the water cycle, secure clean and affordable water for all, and create a sustainable, strong water economy in Europe. It is thus based on these three objectives or pillars. One, to restore and protect the water cycle, taking what we call a source-to-sea approach. We would like to ensure water quantity and quality, improve water retention on land, and effectively prevent water pollution, tackling pollutants in drinking waters such as PFAS. Secondly, with the Water Resilience Strategy, we aim to build a water-smart economy in order to attract investments, promote the EU's water industry, and overall boost its competitiveness. And thirdly, the idea is to secure clean and affordable water and sanitation for all. Action is organized around 5 flagships. Firstly, structured dialogues with all the member states. Secondly, increasing funds for water management through the cohesion policy, but also through funding coming from the European Investment Bank. We'd like to put in place an action plan on digitalization in the water sector and more investments in research, innovation, industry and skills. And lastly, and importantly, setting up an EU real-time early warning and monitoring system for floods and droughts. So that is in a few words what the Water Resilience Strategy is all about. Now, focusing on the marine component, this is where the source-to-sea approach comes into play. This approach is based on an integrated management of fresh and marine waters to restore the water cycle. This restored water cycle is the very basis for ensuring water resilience and also addressing the challenges from climate change. To achieve this, we need to fully protect our ecosystems and also restore nature both at land and at sea. As we know, the marine waters form an intrinsic part of the water cycle, and this is why applying a source-to-sea approach will be fundamental. Firstly, this approach is based on a full implementation of the Water Framework Directive, but also the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, which is the directive that my unit is responsible for its implementation, and as such strengthen the source-to-sea links. Then it also focuses on preventing pollution at source. This includes pollution from land-based sources, and this strategy calls for limiting nutrient pollution of the aquatic water systems. And then finally, and importantly from our perspective, is the announcement in the strategy of a full revision of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, on which I will say a few more words later on. Now, focusing on the other initiative I mentioned in my introduction, this is the Ocean Pact. I'm sure you've all heard about it. It was adopted on the 5th of June. and you have the reference here. So the Ocean Pact aims to put in place a new governance approach for ocean policies. It is a new strategy to protect the oceans, strengthen maritime industries, and support the well-being of those living in coastal regions. The strategy unifies all the EU ocean-related policies under one single framework. Now, how does it try to do this? For this, it sets 6 priority areas. The first one being protecting and restoring ocean health. The second, boosting competitiveness of the EU's sustainable blue economy. Thirdly, the building of resilience of coastal, island and outermost regions. Fourthly, improving ocean research and knowledge, which it aims to do through an EU Ocean Observation Initiative and the establishment of a digital twin of the oceans, and also focusing on security and defense, and lastly on ocean diplomacy. Importantly, the Ocean Pact calls for the development of a so-called Ocean Act by 2027. This would serve as a single legal framework to implement the Pact's key objectives. It will build on a revision of the Maritime Spatial Planning Directive to improve a sea basin management. This will be a management across the different sea basins in Europe. So it really goes for regional coordination and cooperation, and also a good coordination between the different sectors. Also, it envisages the establishment of a new ocean board to guide the Pact's rollout. All in all, the Ocean Pact aims to simplify and synchronize ocean-related reporting obligations for member states in the existing legislation. Again, focusing on the first pillar or the first priority of this Ocean Pact, this is the aim to protect and restore ocean health. There, the Act aims to reduce or to address the pressures on the ocean that harm marine ecosystems and biodiversity, also affect coastal communities who are mostly impacted by these pressures, but also the fishery sector and other sea-based activities. The Pact recognizes the ocean as an ally in the fight against climate change and underscores the need to increase resilience of marine ecosystems. It also calls for restoring degraded coastal and marine habitats and a full expansion of so-called marine protected zones or marine protected areas to comply with the Global Biodiversity Framework's objectives of protecting 30% of our sea by 2030 and 10% strictly protected. Then, thirdly, it also calls, like the Water Resilience Strategy, for a revision of the Maritime Marine Strategy Framework Directive and also the Maritime Spatial Planning Directive, all around the sustainable management of human activities at sea, following this ecosystem-based approach, which I mentioned earlier, which is also one of the key pillars of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, also called MSFD. And then lastly, it calls on tackling marine and freshwater pollution, again, like the Water Resilience Strategy, taking a source-to-sea approach, in particularly tackling the land-based sources of pollution, such as agricultural runoff of nutrients, and also chemical pollution, which is, I understand, the focus of this of your project in the seminar. Then I'd like finally in this slide to say a few words on our directive, the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, Directive 2008/56 EC, which we are called to revise by 2027. Recently, you may have heard about this. We undertook an evaluation of this directive. It was adopted and published on the 6th of March of this year. It recognizes that the MSFD has successfully put in place a holistic and integrated framework of EU marine waters for the achievement of good environmental status and the management of human activities following this ecosystem-based approach, which should ensure an integrated approach involving all sectors which impact the marine environment. In spite of these achievements since 2008, the evaluation also pointed to a number of problem areas that have limited the effectiveness of the directive, and also the fact that good environmental status, as it is defined in the directive, has not been achieved to date. As we know, marine ecosystems are still under threat, biodiversity is declining, we have mounting pressures, not in the last place, of course, from climate change, but also from many other sources. So the main areas identified concern, first of all, the legal framework of the directive, which is missing some key concept or has unclarity around the main objectives, such as good environmental status, which is defined by member states at national level, and very much differ in terms of application, even though we have so-called threshold values, which should give a quantitative limitation of what is good environmental status. Secondly, the implementation is very complex and it's not always effective on the ground. The directive is missing operational targets by which we could monitor progress towards good environmental status. And there are also problems around cooperation between relevant authorities, but also around funding. Thirdly, I should also mention on the implementation the fact that we have issues there are gaps and overlaps with the Water Framework Directive and also the nature legislation in terms of the implementation cycles and reporting, which also hamper an effective operation of the directive. And this also brings in the source to sea approach, because what we would like to see is a better streamlining between these different regulatory instruments. Then thirdly, on regional cooperation, that is one of the key pillars of the MSFD. Nevertheless, we see huge differences between different sea basins for many different reasons, some of them being geopolitical. But we'd like to see a strengthened regional cooperation. Also on policy coherence, I also already mentioned these issues with environmental legislation, the gaps and overlaps in implementation and reporting, but this also includes policy coherence with the wider maritime legislation, such as maritime spatial planning and fisheries, where there is great potential for increasing coherence. And finally, very importantly, data management, which is not always efficient. We have a lot of data being developed or collected under the MSFD, but this data is not always of sufficient quality to be used or be shared. Then I'd like to mention as well that there's significant potential identified for simplification and administrative burden reduction, so to make it easier to implement for both member states and the Commission. And as I started saying earlier in my presentation, both the Water Resilience Strategy and the Ocean Pact announce a future revision of the MSFD as one of their flagship actions by 2027, so it should be done in parallel with the development of the Ocean Act under the so-called Ocean Pact that I presented. So this gave you a very quick overview of the policy landscape as we see it, mentioning in particular these most recent developments around the two strategies. And I hope that kind of sets the scene for the rest of the workshop and discussions this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bobo, for your intervention and for this reviewing of the EU maritime legislation right now in such a special moment where just the water resilience strategy was released a couple of weeks ago. Before going on with the webinar, I would like to tell you that we gotta thank NHS because we have this company with which we are gonna be able to web streaming this webinar in total 5 languages. Everyone that wants to hear the webinar in French, Spanish, German, Portuguese, or Greek, you have been sent before the webinar a link in which you can basically get there, and you can follow this webinar in one of these languages. And now I would like to make a little break because we got a last minute intervention. We are really honored to have a little video of the member of the European Parliament, Dimitris Tsiodras, who has just listened about OneBlue about our webinar and wanted to give us a little feel, a little salute to us. So we got a video of him that we will be showing right now. So I will just let my IT team to do so, and we can hear the declarations of the member of the European Parliament, Dimitris Tsiodras. So you can go ahead.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and honor to join you today at this important joint event dedicated to one of the most critical challenges of our time, the preservation of healthy freshwater ecosystems. Let me begin by underlining the significance of glaciers. These are not only vital sources of fresh water, but also crucial regulators of our planet's climate. From the Himalayas to the Alps, glacier meltwater sustains ecosystems, supports economies, and secures the livelihoods of billions of people. Yet, the rapid retreat of glaciers, which has as a result the further worsening of the climate crisis, is intensifying water scarcity, especially in vulnerable regions such as the Mediterranean basin. Just last year, water-related disasters displaced over 40 million people and caused damages exceeding 480 billion. At the same time, the quality of our water remains a major concern. In 2021, only 39% of the EU's surface waters met good ecological standards, and just 26% achieved good chemical status. Access to water must also be recognized as a pillar of Europe's food security. Already, over 44% of agricultural land in the EU faces seasonal water stress. Our citizens, such as families, farmers, and businesses, deserve guaranteed access to clean, secure, and affordable water. In this urgent context, we must shift from declarations to decisive action. As co-chair of the European Parliament's MEP Group on Climate Change, Biodiversity and Sustainable Development, and as a member of the Committee on the Environment, Climate and Food Safety, I welcome the European Commission's recently launched Water Resilience Initiative, a comprehensive strategy that aims to enhance sustainable water management while fostering innovation and strengthening Europe's competitiveness. To make Europe water resilient, we must deliver on three core objectives. First, restore and protect the water cycle as basis for sustainable water supply. Second, build a water-smart economy that drives competitiveness and attracts investment. And third, secure clean and affordable water and sanitation for all. To achieve these goals, the European Commission will pursue delivering a series of flagship actions, including maximizing the use of CAP strategic plans to enhance water resilience through knowledge sharing, supporting member states and regions in reorienting cohesion policy funds towards water resilience during the mid-term review, developing an EU-wide action plan to accelerate the digital transformation of the water sector. However, turning this ambitious vision into reality demands substantial and sustained funding. The upcoming multi-annual financial framework offers a strategic opportunity to mobilize the necessary financial resources. Targeted investments in water infrastructure, digital innovation, and sustainable management have the potential to revolutionize how Europe safeguards and utilizes its water resources. By placing water resilience as one of the main priorities in the next MFF, we can protect ecosystems, enhance the EU's strategic autonomy, and secure lasting social and economic well-being for future generations. Ladies and gentlemen, today's event is a valuable opportunity to share insights, discuss challenges, and highlight innovative solutions. Your expertise and commitment will help shape the policies and actions needed for a sustainable future. I wish you all a successful event. Thank you.
So there we got the words from the member of the European Parliament, Mr. Dimitris Tsiodras, to whom we thank a lot for being able to be here, at least not on live, but through this recorded video. And now we will go on with the expected schedule of the webinar, as we are welcoming Maria Marta Barroso Quiroga, Chemical Engineering Advisor at Innova Foundation, that will be presenting the latest updates and the latest review of the EU Marine Regulation regarding the work that we have made in this project. Her contribution will be focused on an analysis of the legislative situation regarding the EU regulation on marine waters, focusing on some gaps that the project has identified in the monitoring and control of contaminants of emerging concern. Ms. Barroso Quiroga, thank you very much for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, John. I have also prepared some slides. I will share my screen. Let me know if you see everything. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you seeing this,
Perfect.
everything? Okay.
Yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah.
So, thank you. So, first of all, good morning to everyone. Today we're going to present an overview of the legislative landscape concerning contaminants of emerging concern, even though the previous speaker, Ms. Anna, has given us a great review of the main legislative key regulations. So, as John said, this work is based on our ongoing research and policy analysis within the One Blue project. The One Blue project is a Horizon Europe project aimed at improving the safety and sustainability of marine environments. And within the project, we have a task, the 5.9, which is focused on safety guidelines and policy recommendations. And today we will focus on the regulatory challenges around compounds of emerging concerns in marine waters and among other frameworks or systems in general. Several frameworks govern water and chemical pollution in the European Union. However, none of them fully address the characteristics and risk of contaminants of emerging concerns. And what are the contaminants of emerging concern? These are substances like pharmaceuticals, microplastics, and persistent chemicals such as PFAS, so these per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, whose presence and potential impact are increasingly understood and posing a complex challenge to water and ecosystem health. While the EU has made significant strides in environmental legislation, important gaps remain in how we control and monitor and address these emerging pollutants. So my presentation is going to outline these current challenges that we have identified within the deliverable. This is the first draft, of course, and we're going to continue working on this. So as Anna has already told us, the different key directives, such as the Water Framework Directive, the Environmental Quality Standards Directive, the REACH regulation, and recently the recast of the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive. Important gaps persist. So these include a fundamental lack of coherent integration across different sectors and significant disparities in implementation among member states and an urgent need for a more adaptive legal framework to tackle these complex issues like the mixture toxicity and the impacts of climate change. So as I said before, there are several frameworks related to this, but none of them fully address the characteristics of the chemical and the risk of the contaminants of emerging concerns. So we have identified 11 gaps on the legislation. Some of them has been already addressed. But I think I will dive in a little more. Firstly, a major challenge is the absence of a universally agreed upon legally binding definition of the chemicals, the compounds and emerging concern across the European water-related legislation. So this inconsistency complicate risk assessment and regulatory action. So this means there isn't a single efficient definition, and these legislations guides all actions. So we need to address this. Secondly, the regulatory landscape itself suffers from a real complexity, because we are dealing with multiple regulations that can be dispersed, ambiguous, and even duplicate, hindering effective implementation. And also monitoring remains fragmented, while the Environmental Quality Standards Directive includes a watch list mechanism that is a tool. A systematic and comprehensive monitoring often focuses primarily on surface water, but it is not addressing other crucial matrices like biota and sediments. And also we have identified another crucial focus that has to be related to chemical mixture, because the current legislation often lacks of a clear methodologies for assessing the combined effects of multiple chemicals, which can be far more complex and far more harmful than individual toxicities. Additionally, there are gaps in controlling diverse sources of contaminants of emerging concerns, and while regulations like REACH regulations and the Plant Protection Products Regulation address market access, there are other sources like urban runoff, certain industrial emissions, and household products that are not always sufficiently covered. Regarding to pharmaceutic pollution, despite the positive steps related to that are inside the extended producer responsibility scheme, a more holistic strategy is still needed, especially given the most pollution comes from the human excretion, so not just improper disposal. And also the microplastics. While the regulatory efforts are progressive within initiatives like the EU strategy for plastic in circular economy and the single plastic use directive, microplastic regulations remain partial, with key sources like tire wear and textile shredding still inadequately addressed, and a lack of standardized monitoring. Furthermore, we observed some inconsistencies and fragmentations across all the different directives. Of course, this leads to misalignments. For instance, there is a different threshold we have identified for pesticides in the groundwater directive versus the plant protection products regulation, though that leads to misalignment. And of course, it is that limits the application of the legislation. And of course, the climate change impact is really, really important. It's on the emerging challenge is the limited integration of the climate change considerations into the contaminants of emerging concern management, because climate change changes the fate, the transport, and the toxicity of the contaminants. So current frameworks often don't account how extreme weather or how the temperature shift may influence these compounds and which are their risk. Also, the marine environment requires specific attention. The Marine Strategy Framework Directive still lacks of a specific and standardized parameters for contaminants for emerging concern. And also, as Anna stated, the cross-border data remains a challenge for this transboundary marine pollution. And also, finally, the persistence of inconsistent implementation and enforcement around the member states. So they have variations in technical capacity, resources, and of course the national priorities, and this hinders the effective and uniform applications of these contaminants of emerging concern regulations across the EU. That implies that we need to get to a unified approach. So these 11 gaps that we have identified goes from conceptual and definitional challenges to practical issues in monitoring, source control, and enforcement. So we need to address these soon. And finally, moving on to our first draft of policy recommendations, we first, of course, recommend establishing a clear, flexible work definition of the contaminants of emerging concerns to be used consistently across all water-related directives. These definitions of the sex should be based on criteria like persistence, bioaccumulation, and toxicity. Secondly, it is crucial to expand and harmonize the contaminants of emerging concern monitoring across the European Union. This means extending the monitoring obligations beyond the watch list to include marine waters, sediments, sludge, and biota, with a specific focus on microplastics, PFAS, and pharmaceuticals. So this would lead will ensure to have comparable and long-term data collection. We need to strengthen integration between water, chemicals, and water legislation because I think a centralized EU coordination mechanism could help to avoid these conflicting thresholds and the streamlined implementation. And also we must introduce new approaches to pollution source identification and tracking. This involves tracing contaminants. As Anna also already stated, this source-to-sea approach will enable more effective programs of measurements. And we also recommend providing target support for equitable implementations across all the European Union through capacity building for member states, with those member states having lower monitoring and enforcement capabilities. That includes technical training, data sharing platforms, and EU co-funding investments in advanced treatment technologies. And related to the extended producer responsibility, we recommend promoting innovation and green design. The recast of the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive has taken steps towards pharmaceuticals and cosmetics, but this scheme should be broadened up to other relevant sectors, such as the cleaning products or other industrial chemicals. And this goes hand to hand to promote eco designs and the substitution of hazardous substances. So this creates a direct policy lever for source control, encouraging industry to produce safer products from the outset, and fostering a more circular and sustainable economy. So as Anna stated, the Water Resilience Strategy and the Ocean Pact, both initiatives emphasize cross-sectional integration, also stakeholder engagement, and better financial backing so we can improve these water and marine systems. While we are leading to this, we ask, or I ask to ourselves, so we ask to ourselves, what kind of future do we want for our water, our health, our ecosystems? I think that these recommendations, so by adopting a clear definition, enhancing systematic monitoring, strengthening legislative coherence, focus on robust source control, supporting capacity building across member states, promoting green innovation. I think with all this, we can lead to a more resilient and forward-looking European Union water policy. So this is not only about environmental compliances, it's about protecting what sustains us, clearly. So thank you for your attention. I think I have done everything. I have said everything.
Thank you very much, Maria Marta, for showing which have been one of the main lines of action of OneBlue during the last months, preparing this policy brief with the partners of this project. And we are really proud to start showing this really first results of OneBlue, even though, as my colleague have said, we will be updating this policy brief during the duration of the project that will end up in June 2027. So now it's time to move on to the next panel, in which we are inviting initiatives, projects, events that has joined to the European Green Week 2025. Basically, we are going to check how they have aligned with the main motto and the main objectives of this year's European Green Week. And I would like to salute first to Mr. Robert van Spingelen, President of the European Sustainable Phosphorus Platform and representative of the Upcycle project. Mr. van Spingelen will be explaining us briefly the main conclusions of their ESPP workshop, celebrated from 10th to 12th June in Bergen in Norway. This workshop was focused on the nutrient management in aquaculture, feed, seafood processing, and fish sludge valorization. So thank you very much, Mr. van Spingelen, for being with us. The floor is all yours.
Thank you for the invitation, and I will pass through the workshop we had last week in Bergen. I'm president of the European Sustainable Phosphorus Platform. The European Sustainable Phosphorus Platform itself is a non-for-profit organization that's actually doing phosphorus, but also nitrogen. Yeah, and we are the go-between between our members and the EU. The EU, where we talk about actually facilitating the reuse of nutrients. So, where we go? Next one. We had a workshop which was organized by the ESPP in Aqua about the nutrient management, where we discussed agricultural feed, seafood processing, and fish sludge valorizations. The focus of the workshop was on circular nutrient management in aquaculture and fisheries, and the goal was to identify regulatory gaps and propose coherent policy and measurements. The contributions to this workshop was ESPP, Inaqua, via Norsk, the Upcycle project, Regencels, and different stakeholders, sector stakeholders. If we talk about the conclusions, what we had initially is that there's a significant potential for nutrient recovery from agricultural sludge, aquaculture sludge, or fish sludge, and marine byproducts. But we also see some barriers there. What we discussed were the current regulation, the Animal Byproduct Regulation, or ABP, which is the shortcut, 1069/2009, and the regulation for the fertilizer product regulation, which is the 2019/1009. They both lack a clear provision for agriculture-derived materials, meaning there's a need for harmonized regulatory pathways to enable safe and efficient valorization. Valorization also is not economically viable at present without policy and market support. And if we talk about the workshop priorities, what came out was to couple the regulatory pathways with technical, feasible, and market-ready solutions, promote regional cooperation, innovation, and shared learning, and ensure the alignment of the nutrient recovery with the environment protection and circular economy objectives. What did the ESVP contribute about? We actually convened with a multi-stakeholder dialogue on agriculture circularity. We put some input in the EU Circularity Economy Act and related policies. We compiled technical data requirements for the EFSA risk assessment, and we promoted alignment of the zero pollution and the farm to fork objectives. The Inaqua Norsk contributions was addressing the data gaps under the ABPR, and Animal Byproduct Regulations, and the FPR, which is the Fertilizing Product Regulations, generating evidence on nutrient recovery technologies, sludge capture, digestion, composting, and supporting EFSA dossiers potential CMC inclusion, which is component material category, into the Fertilizer Product Regulation 2019/1009, and facilitating cooperation across agriculture technology and agricultural sectors. The UP Cycle contributions, part was also the UP Cycle, which is part of the UNEA, the United Nations Environmental Assembly. So Upcycle is advancing proposals for marine nutrient circularity at EU and international levels. They submitted a draft recommendations to the UNEA on integrating nutrient recovery in marine pollutant reduction strategies, and supports development of global standards for safe valorization of aquaculture-derived materials. So what are the recommendations to the industry itself? First of all, defining questions for EFSA. Why? Because what is the scope? Is it only fish sludge, or also do we also talk about aquaculture sludge, which is slightly different? Intended uses. Are we talking only on fertilizer products, or does it also going to be used as insect feed? Because there are different legislations involved there. Looking at the use in the current Animal Byproduct Regulation, the ABP, EU Regulation 142/2011, which describe process methods for use as fertilizer products. There are different areas where it could actually already fit in. For example, composting and anaerobic digestion in Annex 5, in manure processing methods in Annex 11, combustion as in Annex 3. Or should we define methods for use, for example, as insect feed? But also risk aspects to consider in this whole in the fish recovery, the fish sludge recovery. For example, biological risks, but also possible contaminants, heavy metals content, metals from the feeds like copper, zinc, iron, and manganese, pharmaceuticals in feed, and iron, aluminium content from flocculants, which are used by separating solid from liquids of the sludge. And the advice to industry is to collect and develop data to support and define use of metals. Policy recommendations, mandate EFSA assessment based on industry proposals, support data collection to prepare this assessment, meaning characterization of the different aquaculture fish sludges, define the fertilizer value of such sludges, include aquaculture sludge in Annex 2 of the EU fertilizer product regulations, the EU 2019-109, after defining or clarifying the animal byproduct endpoints, the waste endpoints, and define if specific criteria are needed, salinity, fish pharmaceuticals, where you have to test on. And mobilize EU funding, Horizon Europe, LIFE, Interact, and CAP strategic plans to actually develop the nutrient recovery of infrastructure and cooperation. Conclusion of this workshop: proposals aim to enable regulatory solutions that support marine nutrient circularity across the EU. The reuse of fish sludge as a component material strengthens Europe's self-sufficiency of mineral fertilizers and nutrient supply. Ensure coherent and science-based practical measurement aligned with the EU Green Deal and the UN objectives. And we invite all stakeholders to engage in the collaborative efforts to operationalize these proposals and advance marine nutrient circularity across Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Van Stingelen, for basically showing us which has been the main assets regarding this ESPP workshop that took place last week in Norway. I'm sure that our attendees have really enjoyed hearing about the contributions that this workshop has made and the recommendations you're making to the industry, but maybe they have any question regarding their intervention or maybe the ones before. So just to remind you that in your corner below, in the right side of your Eventbrite broadcasting, you have a little QR that you can scan, and you can make questions. You can send questions in this case to our panelists. So don't be shy and go ahead, because we are here to exchange ideas, not just to showcase which has been the work in each of our projects. And now we are moving a bit more southern Europe, where we're moving from Bergen to Venice, and we are connecting with Davide Poletto, Executive Director of the Venice Lagoon Free Project and representative of SeaClear 2.0 under this project, as Mr. Poletto will be sharing the main conclusions of another workshop, in this case for the marine litter monitoring, removal, and biocircular economy workshop that took place in Venice on June 1st. In this case, Mr. Poletto will explain the main assets about this event and focused on showcasing innovative and sustainable methodologies, technologies, and solutions for the monitoring, removal, and recycling of marine litter, and particularly plastics. Mr. Poletto, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Don.
It's completely yours. Yeah, we are with you here.
Thank you, Don. Thank you very much for the preparation and organization of this very important event. And good morning to everybody. I would like to ask you support in displaying the PowerPoint, if you don't mind.
Yes, sure. You should have in the upper part of your screen.
I sent you yesterday. Beside.
Yeah. If you cannot find it, I can try to pull it. Just give me. So yeah, I have it here. So if you want, I can share my own screen, and you can go ahead with your presentation in this way.
Sorry, I cannot hear you very well. The connection is not good. But anyway, just to say, because if you can display for me.
Basically, okay. I was telling you that I'm about to display it.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead with the presentation. Good. Just okay. So you're able. I think I'm sharing the screen supposedly, so you can go ahead.
I don't see anything so far.
Just Let me check because I should be supposing to share it. Okay. So
Well, let me try that once more. Sorry.
yeah.
Should be this one. Let me see. It's in PDF. Do you see?
Yeah, that is it. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, good. Because what?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Problem
All right.
solved.
Thank you, John. So,
You can go ahead.
sorry for this delay. Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for being here today. Yes, I'm Davide Poletto, Venice Common Plastic Free Executive Director. 5 years ago, we set in place this international workshop in Venice, along with the CNR ISMAR, and it was one of the workshop, the major workshop of a combination of two European projects, Horizon 2020, Innoplastic, that was coordinated by SINTEF Norway and Maelstrom, coordinated by CNR ISMAR. And after the Horizon 2020 ended, and actually the core subject were exactly the identification, removal, and provide circular economy to marine litter, in particular plastics. And we were lucky enough, and or maybe skillful enough, to win two additional Horizon projects, Horizon Europe, the Lighthouse for the Mediterranean, basically the project CClear 2.0 remedies. And we intended to continue this tradition. Now we get to the 5th edition of this international workshop. And so today I will, in a way, try also to showcase what we generally make an offer, and also invite those who might interest in contacting us and to have a floor in this specific event, international event next year, to build up a program together. So this is what we can offer. So to move forward, and actually this event has been always registered as partner event to Ukraine Week, and this was organized this last event in June was organized by us and by ESD Group with me from Malta, and we officially with the Boat Show Venice, that it takes place every year at the same time, more or less May, June. What we did in this specific workshop, so we have 3 main sessions, and these are the sections the program overview was. The first one is focused on marine litter monitoring assessment, and secondly, a solution for marine litter removal, and then circularity, blue circular economy in a broader perspective. So in the first part, it's the experts and the scholars and representative of enterprises presented studies on microplastic generated by textile washing processes, the danger of microplastic posed to marine life, in particular turtles, environmental impact of end-of-life fiberglass vessel on aquatic life from microorganisms to including also mussels and oysters. Okay, so the first presentation was a CNR IPBC, and the very interesting part related to the impact of the something that we do every day, and that we're maybe not that very much concerned in general about the impact of textile industry and the washing of the textile in producing fibers that are released and microfibers that are released into our waters. And this is a scourge untackled so far, and it's part because of the legislation that we heard from the speaker before, but also because the technology nowadays is not that up to the task to tackle the issue. So that we want to give always to provide a floor to researchers and innovators that have some kind of solution, so maybe not really not still commercial level, but in the case of the CNR colleague, they have developed a specific membrane to try to retain these fragments and these in particular fibers. So we have to be even more concerned about the source of this pollution, particulate pollution. And then as NGO, we are very much active on this issue level too. So in Andrea Kameda, this is another representative of CNR from another another especially agency of CNR based in Sardinia, and they're very much keen on the turtles, saving the turtle, rescue recovery action. They manage the nest, and they also try to study what the turtle eating and what's their diet. It's actually, they end up that many of these turtles that are dead, they ingest a massive quantity of different kind of plastics, and others they're dying on already dead from that is because entangled from microplastic by microplastic of sea lions, sea nets, and like in the picture displayed here. So I personally visited their center, the Center of Excellence in the Mediterranean, in Sardinia in particular, which is a place where turtles go and reproduce, and there's massive work they're doing also to restore this beautiful creature to the sea when they encounter that are severely healed or wounded. So this was an additional contribution. And that's very interesting. It's about Professor Teresa Cecchi. She's a professor of high school chemistry. This institute is a Technical and Technological Institute Montagno Fermo. This is one of the oldest professional and technical high school in Italy, one of the most prized. So Teresa, she is really a scholar. It's not just a teacher school. She's really a scholar, and she does a lot of very innovative work. And we have an agreement of cooperation with this technical institute. And actually we recently published in a very high impact peer review this study about the release on contaminants from the end-of-life boats. Okay, so you can see this is Venice, and when you see the red dot there, these are the 3 boats that we identified, we remove and recycle. But by doing this, before removing them, we also check what was released on contaminants in the water, in the ground, in the mud, and so came up with a very interesting outcomes. Basically, we identified 53 volatile compounds and 15 linked to polyurethane. And this is in particular a few of them that's highly impacting cancerogenic. So this goes back again from the empirical evidence and the study research to the legislative change. There is no legislation that is tackling this issue, which is not about Venice, which is of course a living laboratory to test, monitor, or put in practice different kind of solutions. But it's widespread everywhere. So you will see also the next presentation with Corina Chokan. Corina Chokan, she is a professor at the School of Applied Science at the University of Brighton. We work in cooperation with University of Brighton. We start having these exchanges because the problem they have on a glass reinforced plastic or fiberglass and boats at the end of life, in particular leisure boats, on which there is no regulation at the moment, and the member states are left alone in dealing with this. And this is a pretty important source of pollution, a pollution that is underestimated in terms of the impact they have on the marine life. So the study of Corina was focusing on Chichester Harbour in UK, with a long tradition of farming oysters, and it came out that the oysters are dying and not growing as in the past, and they come out that the reason was really because all these oysters, many of them, they were speared by fiberglass, microplastic from the fiberglass that have a behavior that mimic the asbestos. Okay, so it's asbestos-like pollutants, and this is a new research on the rise. And we want to give we wanted to give a spotlight in our international workshop if we keep doing this in the future. We also have set in place a specific program for this in Venice. It's called the Ghost Boat Program. So we identified end-of-life boats as stranded in nature, abandoned in nature. We try to recover them and see if possible to recycle. We have also a channel value for that. And trying to assess more closely what is the release of these boats at the end of life. as is one of the many stories about the material wonder that turn into contaminant, and there's plenty, the history of chemical in Europe and around the globe is plenty of these wonders. They turn into real scourge. Okay, just a few pictures from the UK. So you see it's a widespread problem everywhere, and we have to be really aware of it. So the second part, second session, showcased this cleanup technology to remediate the problem and try to reduce the impact of this. And this includes the CClear 2.0 autonomous robotic system, on which we're partner, and that's been very recently tried in the Hamburg Port. The Hamburg Port Authority is a partner of this project. On the passive retention system using urban rivers in Tirana and along the Po River in Italy. That's a river cleaning technology. Also part in Remedies project. And the audience also heard about the startups representative. We need to give room and space to a young generation of researchers, also inventors, and they come up with startups. They're very much in line with removal and cleanup technologies. And this is some example from the Innovative Hub in Malta. So just to give you, this was Matteo, the colleague Matteo Smith from the Hamburg Port Authority, that was providing, narrating the very recent, the last trial that we did with the SeaCat. The SeaCat is a vessel on which they operate a number of innovations capable to detect and monitor marine litter from the surface, underwater, and water column, and also through artificial intelligence recognize all the objects, and through the means of a specific robotic arm, they are able also to clean up very precisely and removing from the sea bottom all different debris. So it's something that is more focused on clean up the legacy of pollution. And so we have 6 demo sites here and the project, CClear 2.0 in Hamburg, Marseille, Cyprus, Dubrovnik, Venice, and Tarragona. So the colleagues will be in Venice next year during the workshop period, so we will be able to display at the boat show this technology too. Then we have the partners from the Remedies project, and is Mold, and they have a demo site in the Lana River. Is a small urban river in the city center of the capital city Tirana of Albania. But they also the same solution they are applying under the Inspire project we cooperate with. And in the River Po in Italy is one of the biggest river in Italy, one of the biggest in Europe. So this is a very interesting system, which is based on floating models that spin and they are not proposed or work on the basis of fossil fuels energy generated, but by the stream of the tidal current. And so it is highly effective, especially for the surface and surface median water column, the rivers. So it's one of the upstream strategy to try to retain litter before they go into the sea and the ocean. And so it's effective because they are able to stop almost 100% of floating semi-submerged macro litter. It's very passive, don't need operators, so we're really keen to expand these opportunities also in other continents, and thinking about big rivers in Africa, and especially in nearby mega town and cities now growing up. Yes, that was a narrative of this Malta Accelerate, Climate Accelerate on Malta with Alessandro Silvestri, that presented the array of blue economy and climate tech startup, and among which a solution called Vasilix, Ogier, and Tuco. So young guys behind these technologies and invention, trying to to support them in becoming marketable and to have a future in all different possible employment in the market. So, okay, well, we don't too much about this. So this is about the case study for the artificial removal of microplastic, and which is a bit more complicated than macroplastic, as we know. So there is a part of the project INSPIRE, and there's a CNR ISMAR that trying to identify what kind of microplastic are released into the river, and trying to implement some system that's still on the implementation phase. So we cannot give you more detail about this at the moment. But yeah, there's just I want to return to the idea of an innovation system of mold river cleaning that will be put in place there. And actually we got also support from the regional Veneto region. This is the responsible at the territorial level for the site, and we managed to involve them and become a signatory of the Mission Ocean and Water Charter very recently. So this is sort of diplomacy from the NGO that not just the government are entitled of. And sometimes we have good success with institutions to gather their consensus, and then also some practical operational work and some legislative change, which is also needed at the local or regional level. And then we have the third part, which is the panelists address the opportunities in the blue circular economy. And well, there's pretty interesting example and topics include the use of the blue crab chitin to create biodegradable polymers. Success stories of women entrepreneurs in the marine sector to the Wind Blue project, which is a project under ENFAF, is recently finished. And the expansion of the Ghost Boat initiative for recycling end-of-life vessels already mentioned before. And finally, the regional market. So we have also representative of the regional market, sharing insight from its policy framework supporting sustainable maritime industries. So what we realized that is there is one lack, I think, in all these innovation research projects that are improving very much and are improved very much compared to the previous Horizon and FP7, but still there's a lack of communication, I would say, between what we call the world of the interreg, so the different pieces of territory, communities, they might also uptake certain innovative solution and the research innovation. So I think that there should be more efforts to also at European Union level, and for the different DG to work and to talk to each other. So, like the DG Innovation is doing with climate and other topics, and DG Mare, but also DG Regio is also an important interlocutor. That's why we want to bond always interregional interreg projects and program. Like for instance, Journable, this is the other project we're working on, the blue circular economy under the IPA-Adrian, and the other projects that are more scientific, you like, on the research base, but we have to bond the society with science, otherwise we'll not make it. Okay, so this is a part, that's why we started, I mentioned IPA-Adrian project Journable, because we started by private funding without any funds from institutions or the European Union, and we set in place this program and say that Ghost Boat. It was very, very interesting and appreciated. So now under the IPA-Adrian, we want to share our experience here in this specific site at Venice's Lagoon. This is a UNESCO site, as you know, Ramsar site, in order to become an example, if you like, or just a forerunner of activities that can be also uptaken and shared with other sites around the world, not only in Europe. And there's a much need of tackling this issue on the rise. I see these are some pictures of our lagoon, and our boats are abandoned by owners that we cannot trace back, and so we just leave them. And if you imagine the craziness of the legislation is that, if you have a car that doesn't work anymore, then it's life. You have a place where you can carry this car to, and this car will be dismantled, recycled, etc. So we don't have the same for recreational boats. We have this for yacht, but we don't have for recreational boat. This is really a policy gap we need to mind. And so, and then from our experience, we build up a chain of value, and we're also showcasing to other countries in the Adriatic Basin, Ionian Adriatic Basin, how to do it. To avoid that these boats are left abandoned in nature, releasing the amount of elements that are related to mainly to the fiberglass, but not only the metals, acid batteries, and paintings, and that's also damaging our environment, and there are pollutants of different sources. So, but we want also secure, to turn these boats into secondary raw materials for a process that, without having new fiberglass, but uses this fiberglass, there are certain treatments to get, for instance, furniture that can be used on or bench and tables, any other thing that can be used for the indoor or outdoor reason purposes. And then we have this WindBlue project, which is very interesting because it's a project just focused on women. They are entrepreneurial women, entrepreneurs in the field of the blue economy, of the circular blue economy, biotechnology, aquaculture and fisheries, offshore renewable energy, sustainable coastal tourism, and cutting-edge technology. I think that's very, very interesting. What they made a sort of mapping, collecting best practices, and 68 in 14 European countries. So the women and the gender element into the blue economy should be more valorized and spoken about. So that's why we don't hesitate to leave always on slot about the women that are actor in this field. And then there's other project we work together, and starting on Maelstrom, and also follow up with WindBlue, a colleague of ours, Carla De Carlis. She is responsible for and the founder of Biochica, which is a small enterprise, a startup in a way. And so we try to extract chitin, chitosan from the blue crab. These are alien species that landed to our sea, the Adriatic Sea, that come from America or the United States on this coastline. They come for different, through transport navigation, global scale. We get, we get animals or anyway creatures coming from different sea basin oceans. So they found our lagoon a special place to reproduce in a very fast rate. So the idea is that now there is a clear emergency here. They are destroying the local economies of shell farming and fish farming. So the idea was already set in place a sort of a chain of value for this blue crab for the meat. And it's a delicacy in the United States, and so we're open up a new Italian brand of products of cuisine. And on the other end, what is not a biological element of the crab, what is not organic, is not food, useful food and preparation food, and actually can be used, especially the exoskeleton, can be used for other purposes. So the idea is that chitin, chitosan, especially chitosan, is highly appreciated, and it's a lot of different properties, and they can be applied in different sections of the economy, from pharmaceutical, beauty industries, and actually the European Union is importing a lot of this material from China. So the idea is also to look at what can be the upside of downs, to have a vision of alien species trying to turn into an opportunity for our economy and trying to rebalance a bit the ecosystem on making sense of this. So, and this is pretty much interesting work done. We're trying also to make some kind of experiment to bond the chitin with another aquatic organic biomass residues with some plastic we recover from our cleanup activities, and to get some new material. But this is just for laboratory test. But I trust we can upgrade and to make coating, natural coating that can replace other kind of coating that's really dangerous for the new pollutants on the rise, and we are now detecting as pollutants. Before we have been massively used in industry and textile industry in particular. So okay, and then this the last thing is about the AMAC, which is an agency of the market region, very linked to the fisheries sector. And they work a lot in the European project, in particular this bilateral project with the other bank of the Adriatic and Interreg project, and like the Adrian, IPA Adrian, and they have innovative tools to tackle marine litter, and that we also did it in joinable project. We are together. But also other kind of solution that have implemented in cooperation hand in hand with fishermen, local fishermen, and fisher industries, and how to preserve also the biodiversity at the level, also considering conservation, the conservation stances, also working with fishermen and fishery sector. That's very important. So yeah, this is sorry, it was a bit quick. It's a long array of things, and the program was very intensive but very useful. And so we keep going on toward this direction. So we also had as our guest a representative officer from the IPA Adrian project, and also from the Mission Ocean Waters, and they're very keen to work together. So really, we're really keen to transfer much of what we develop at the European level as innovation or research innovation action, and to turn into a territorial impact. I think this is the gap we want to bond. If you have any ideas, you want to join us next year in Venice, you're most welcome to do it. And we have limited slots because unfortunately, but you know, if you have any interest, just please don't hesitate to contact us. And here there are our website, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram accounts. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you to you, Mr. Davide Poletto, because of explaining us these three parts of the workshop that you carried on in Venice a couple of weeks ago, and also for showing which are the main actions of the projects in which you are currently involved. And right now, I would like to start our next panel, which is focused on how diverse EU funding projects are creating legislations, are creating policy briefs that are going to design the future of the EU marine legislation. And for this very first panelist, I would like to introduce you Ms. Priscilla Doran, Vice President of the Executive Council of Nucleo, representing the Otters project. And Mr. Doran is going to explain us how the project, how Otters seeks to integrate citizen science into educational frameworks. So, Ms. Doran, thank you very much for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, John. Let me just try to share my screen first.
Yeah.
Can you let me know?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay. Now I just need to make sure that I see you as well, because I don't like to be doing presentations without seeing the people I'm talking to.
Fair enough, yeah.
Yes, okay. Now I have everything. Okay, so thank you for inviting me to this webinar. It is really inspiring to see all of these presentations and see that we have so many people working towards, you know, such important goal, which is to protect our water. And for sure, policy is a very important part of this. I work in Nucleo, an NGO that is devoted to innovation in education for a better world. And here I am presenting also the Otters project, a project funded by the European Mission to restore our oceans and waters. And I'm going to talk to you about education. If I can change my slides. Okay. So I think that it is, people usually say that if we want to change the world, we must change education. And although we say this, I don't think this statement is taken as seriously as it should. And education is lacking in many policies, in many conversations that we have around what we need to change. But it is really important. And if we want to make a change in the world, we definitely should start with changing education. But it's not just any kind of education. And there's this statement by David Attenborough that I really enjoy that says, that no one will protect what they don't care about, and no one will care about what they have never experienced. And this is very true, and it is a perfect statement to differentiate what we see in this picture. On one side, we have an education where students are within four walls with their backs to each other, just listening to teachers talking to them. And yes, of course, many of them might be learning about the importance of water and why we should protect it, but they are bored. Many of them don't understand why they need to learn what they are learning. Some of them are thinking about something else and not paying attention to the teacher. So this is not really an effective approach, and it doesn't activate the emotional system that makes us care about something. While on the other side, as you can see, we have students completely fully engaged and immersed in the theme that they are learning about. So they are going into the river, they are going into the beach, they are collecting data, they are seeing firsthand that the water is polluted, that there are plastics everywhere. So it is completely different. They are becoming emotionally activated. They are learning that this problem is not something that they are just learning in school, but it is a problem that belongs to them as well. And this is very powerful to promote change and to turn students into activists and to make them care and make a change in the world. And citizen science is a very powerful tool to transform education from one type to the other. For those that may not know, citizen science relates to the active involvement of citizens in the scientific process, not just in the generation and collection of data, but in the analysis, in leading campaigns, in defining new research questions. It is a holistic involvement and engagement of communities, students, teachers, whoever wants to be involved in the scientific process. So it is a very important part of science these days because it democratizes science. Anyone can have access to science. Anyone can be creating new scientific knowledge. And it is a way to activate people's minds, but not just their minds, also their hearts, because they are not just reading papers or listening to the news, they are doing the science themselves. So they are owning the process. And we Notters, we have decided to think about how to integrate this informal education, how to engage students and teachers in a systematic way to promote a change. So we have piloted projects integrating citizen science within the curriculum in 9 countries. We have worked with over 300 teachers and 2,000 students, and the outcomes were very clear to us. And in these pictures, you can see some of the outcomes. You have some students have made leaflets and flyers. They have created mascots about water protection. They have went into the streets and disseminated the results to people they didn't know in the community. In the middle picture, you can see one girl, a student. She is making a presentation to our Secretary of State for Energy, explaining what they discovered about their local river and the recommendations that they have to protect it. And on the left side, I personally went to these students. I can tell you that they become totally experts on the theme of pollution in their local beach. And not only they go from conference to conference, from gathering to gathering to show their results, but if you ask them how they feel about the project, they will tell you, now that we know all about this, we want to make something about it. So they have become activists for change, for the protection of water. And the fact is that when we empower students, we empower communities because they are bringing these competencies, this care for nature, the stewardship for the environment home as well. And we know that many students, for example, have brought their families to the sites where they were collecting data from water and explaining to their parents what they have learned. So this has a ripple effect. But the question is, how can we make this a sustainable approach? Because we receive funding, we go to the schools, we do these projects with them, and then the funding ends, we have to leave the school, and what remains there? Sometimes some teachers continue to work on these projects, but many others go back to how they were doing things before. So we need to think about how can we make this a sustainable approach? And the most sustainable approach is to actually integrate citizen science in the country's policies, in the curriculum, and in the activities of formal education. And to create this roadmap and the policy recommendations, we thought that we will not create a roadmap for the teachers, but we will create it with the teachers. So, because they are the ones that know exactly what they need. So we worked with teachers from Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Armenia, and we engaged them in several engagement activities to work with them. And first and foremost, we have discovered that most teachers don't know what citizen science is. Even when they tell you that they know, if you ask them to define it, they will say it is something else. And even those that say that citizen science is the engagement of citizens in the scientific process, they tend to think that it is only in the collection of data. So they don't understand this holistic nature of citizen science. When we ask them to integrate citizen science within the curriculum, we realize that they can integrate it in every single subject domain. And I highlight here the ones that are not related to science, just to open our minds to the fact that they can work with citizen science in history, economy, physical education, geography, English, Portuguese, civic education, whatever you want. So this is an insight that there is not just one solution to integrate citizen science in education. It can be integrated as a cross-disciplinary approach, but schools should have autonomy to co-create their own pathway. And then we did a SCOT analysis with them. The SCOT analysis stands for Strengths, Challenges, Opportunities, and Threats. And they have identified as the most important personal strengths being motivated. So, of course, when we are motivated to do something, we can move mountains, right? They also identify caring for the environment as a strength, which means that they validate citizen science as an approach to foster care for the environment as well. And the challenges, inner challenges that they feel they have, of course, as we expect, are difficulties in managing time and curriculum, lack of know-how, and difficulty in motivating students. They find as opportunities having partnerships and support from the community. When students are motivated, this is also an opportunity. The ability to integrate with activities that are already happening in the school. And then again, the threats are the lack of time, the extensive curriculums, students' lack of interest appears for the third time. So this was very insightful, and it allowed us to create a roadmap for the integration of citizen science in the curriculum in formal education. So we did this as a triangle, as a pyramid, and in the basis of the pyramid, the most important actors are the teachers, the students, the school leadership, the families. They should all be working together, co-creating their own approaches. But education needs a shift. It needs to become more student-centered, to put students in the center of their learning process, to involve them in defining how the activities are going to be carried out. The second layer, also very important, are the researchers, the teacher trainers, the local governments, those that can build a supportive ecosystem, that are holding the hands of teachers and telling them, you know, change is really scary. We are all very scared of change, but it's so important and we are here with you. You are not alone. So we should all be inspiring teachers to do better, to do more, and to shift the way they are working with the students. And then the top layer is the policymakers, of course, because they can pave the way for this to be easy and to be sustainable. And for this layer, we have developed the policy brief, as John said, a policy brief to integrate citizen science in formal education. You can download it from our website. You can use it and disseminate if you want. And the key areas that we talk about is the first and foremost recognizing citizen science as a valid pedagogical approach, because it is really powerful, and then ensuring that the schools have autonomy to work with the curriculum the way they see fit. So ensuring school autonomy will allow teachers to discover the way that works for them, because what works for one might not work for the other. So it is very important to ensure sustainability, also to diversify student assessment models, because if we are continuously focusing on exams and standardized tests, we will definitely fail to measure the development of competencies, of environmental stewardship, of many things that are important when we are working with this kind of models that put students in the center. And then ensuring supportive professional development courses that are tailored to the needs of teachers, and that we should stop thinking that we know what the teachers need. We need to involve them and ask them and co-create with them, just the same way that the teachers need to co-create with their students. I would just like to say that there are many students in the world. In 2021, we had 91 million students in Europe alone. So imagine the whole world. And can you imagine how much data for the protection of water can be collected if all of these students are engaged with citizen science and collecting data? And not just that, we usually talk about education as planting the seeds for the future. And definitely we are planting the seeds for the future. But not just that, we can also be cultivating now. We can make changes now. And the students are really ready to contribute and they want to do something. We just need to give them the opportunity. And for people that have been working in education, I don't know if you are aware of this, we are going through a huge challenge where students are not engaged with education. They don't want to learn, they don't want to be in the school, they don't understand why they have to learn what they are learning, and teachers are facing a huge challenge in captivating students' attention. As you have seen in our SCOT analysis, students' motivation and interest appeared 3 times. And I firmly believe that if students understand that the time they are spending in school is being used for something, is creating a value for the community, they will be engaged. Instead of sitting and listening to a teacher, they can be learning by making changes in the community, by owning their community problems, by being valued members of their community. They don't need to be 12 years in school to be ready to contribute, okay? They can contribute from a really young age. They are ready now, and we need to give them the opportunity. But for this to happen, we need to cherish and to empower the educators. They are facing a huge crisis of not being valued. We don't have enough teachers. And how is this possible? They have the most important career, the most important profession in the world because they are shaping the future of humanity. So we need to have policies that value the teachers, that cherish them and empower them to create the real changes we want to see in the world. Because, as I love this sentence, is not mine, obviously, I just found it, that says that behind every child who believes in themselves is a teacher who believed in them first. So education really is powerful. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Duran, for giving us this overview of the policy brief that you have developed in authors. Quite interesting policy brief that basically, as you said, is trying to involve actively society into science, and which is trying to basically cover this this scientific commitment through other perspectives. So thank you very much, Ms. Lam, for your intervention. Before I move on, may I remind that if you got any question regarding author's policy brief or another part of Ms. Lam's intervention or any other aspect of the webinar, you got in your right corner below a QR you can scan, and there you can upload any questions you have regarding the topic is being shown today. And now we are moving on to another project that has also developed a couple of policy briefs. In this case, we are talking about the Blue Vanadiumics project, and we are having as a representative for this project, Mr. Chris Bowler, Director of Research at the French National Center of Scientific Research, partner entity of Blue Vanadiumics. In this case, Mr. Bowler is presenting the results concerning the disclosure of the origin of genetics resources on which patent applications are based on the World Intellectual Property Organization Treaty, and also under the agreement under the UN Convention on the Law of Sea and the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction, or well, more abbreviated under the BBNG agreement. So, Mr. Bowler, sorry, thank you very much for being with us today. The floor is yours. Mr. Bowler, I think your mic is off because we cannot hear you. I mean, we can see your screen, but we cannot hear you right now. I don't know if you can find the mic button. You have it in your screen in the right upper part, where you can find other buttons. or I don't know if there is any other issue with your mic.
Okay, how about that? You hear me now?
Yeah, we see you perfectly now. Yeah.
All right, but you don't see my screen, right?
Yeah, we see you, but we don't see your screen.
Okay, so I'm going to try again. Right. My computer is allergic to Teams. That's so.
All
Right.
Yeah.
So how about that? Is that good?
Yeah, it's good. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can move the screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope that is all right. Okay, so thank you for asking us to present the Blue Remediomics project. Just briefly, Blue Remediomics is about harnessing the marine microbiome for novel, sustainable biogenics and ecosystem services. Okay, so it's a Horizon Europe project. It began in 2022 and it will be finishing next year in November. And it's coordinated by the European Molecular Biology Laboratory, the EMBL, in Heidelberg, under Rob Finn, and also by myself in Paris from the CNRS. The project has 24 participants, including academia and private sector. Briefly, the project is about a discovery platform to discover new aspects about the marine microbiome. I'll come to that in a second. From this discovery platform, we generate products of environmental, of industrial, of health relevance. And in addition to the scientific aspects, we also work on policy and public engagement. So in a nutshell, the discovery platform in a bit more detail looks like this. As you can see at the top, we have a computational aspect, which consists of taking all of the data that is available publicly from the marine microbiome, in particular from the Tara Oceans project, also from the TREC project, and also from the BioGo ship, Malaspina, and other global sampling campaigns. That data is available publicly, typically, for example, in Magnify at the European Bioinformatics Institute. Those computational resources are used to identify molecules, organisms of potential interest, be it for industrial, for environmental, for biomedical applications. And then those targets are then passed through to cultureomics, based approaches where we culture the organisms or we culture the communities of organisms to generate the molecules of interest, for example. And then the third aspect of the discovery platform is the screening, high throughput screening, to identify molecules, enzymes, organisms of potential interest, which could be.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Bowler, before you can keep on understanding a little message, I don't know if it would be possible that you make your PPTs a bit bigger, trying to put them in presentation mode, because I am just having some messages regarding that they cannot see really well the presentation, so I don't know if you'll be able to make them a bit bigger.
I'm already in presentation mode for me, so.
Okay. Okay. Now the PPT has
as I say, so maybe now you have it better. Let's see.
Yeah, maybe I can maybe try to.
Is that good? Is that different? Is that better?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, perfect.
That's okay, perfect. Now it's full screen. Yeah. Okay. 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 Yeah.
Thank you very much.
My computer doesn't like Teams. So yeah, apologies for that. So we have this discovery platform where we identify genes, molecules, organisms of interest. which may relate to enzymes that degrade molecules of interest, polymers of interest, microplastics, for example, that we heard about earlier. Antimicrobials, very important these days in terms of microbial resistance and the need for new kinds of antibiotics. We have an arm in cosmeceuticals, and we have an arm in phytostimulants to develop new leads for agriculture. We also have environment as a target for identifying, as I said, enzymes that can degrade microplastics. We have targets of aquaculture, in particular for salmon and shrimp, to improve the aquaculture industry. And then we're also developing protocols where we can define a health index for a marine ecosystem based on the microbes that are present in that particular environment and the genes that they are expressing. I appreciate from this webinar, if I understand correctly, most people are chemists and not biologists here, so I'm not going to talk any further about DNA and genomics and all of that, but this is basically in a nutshell what Blue Remediomics tries to explore. What is also important in terms of the environment is linking genes and organisms with chemicals, pollutants that are present. You know, how do microbes degrade xenobiotics in the environment? And this is something which maybe links this project here with some of the other projects that we've talked about. And then in addition to the science, we also have aspects of the project that try to address policy, public engagement aspects, and in particular we have we focus on improving equitable access and benefit sharing of marine genetic resources for the scientific community and beyond. We focus on training researchers on access and benefit sharing, particularly in the Global South. And we aim to increase the awareness of the marine microbiome and explaining that it is really the heart of ocean health and ocean well-being. So the sorts of things that we have done, we've had some town hall kind of activities around Europe, where in particular we explore the do no significant harm concept. You know, to what extent is intervention in a marine ecosystem harming a natural ecosystem? You know, we go into this with respect to blue carbon, with respect to carbon dioxide removal in open ocean, with respect to aquaculture, and we have engagements with the general public, which are always very, very rewarding. And in particular, a focus of what we've been doing here, because we're looking at the global ocean microbiome, if you like. What is very important is the high seas treatment, or the high seas treaty, the BBNJ treaty, which hopefully you're all aware of. This high seas treaty, which was signed in 2023 and is currently being ratified by different UN member states, and probably will be signed by sufficient states by the end of the year, certainly. So we spent a lot of time explaining what the High Seas Treaty means for scientists and lawyers and beyond. We've had a lot of events that are just listed here. Not very interesting to show like this, but a lot of events to explain what the High Seas Treaty is all about. And we've also generated policy briefs. So this is one of them that we have developed, that was published in October 2024, disclosing and sharing genetic resources. And these are recommendations that we, the Blue Remediomics project, together with the Marbles Horizon Europe project, we developed this policy brief that includes recommendations based on the World Intellectual Property Organization and the recent High Seas Treaty. So this policy brief explains what is at stake with the BBNJ Treaty, and also considers recommendations with respect to how to deal with digital sequence information and patents, how to deal with access and benefit sharing, and how to engage, between experts and practitioners with these very, very important aspects that will affect everybody working in the marine domain. This effort has actually led to the publication of a book, which has just been published in February, entitled Decoding Marine Genetic Resource Governance Under the BBNJ Treatment. This is one agreement. This is one of the first books which has come out on the topic, and so I think is an important result from the Blue Remediomics project together with the Marbles project. And then here we have a final policy brief which has been developed by the Blue Remediomics project, in particular by the Tara Ocean Foundation, which is a member of Blue Remediomics, together with the Harvard University. And this is about strengthening the science policy dialogue to ensure that the best scientific knowledge is incorporated into the High Seas Treaty to ensure that the High Seas Treaty will be workable for scientists and will not become, too much of a pain to conform to in the future. So we're very active in this regard as well. So those policy briefs are already publicly available. You can find them on our website if you're interested, and we have some upcoming policy briefs being developed as well. One is about blue carbon, and the other is about intellectual property and access and benefit sharing with respect to marine genetic resources. And I think that is all I have. Yeah, so I can end there, and thank you all for your attention. And have I stopped sharing? I hope so. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is for sure, Mr. Bowler. Thank you very much also to you for your intervention, for explaining us which has been these different diverse policy briefs that Blue Remediomics has been developing during the last months and years. I'm really sure that the audience has really well noted about your updates and how you are covering also these scientific gaps. And we are moving to our last finalist from this panel. We are moving to Austria, because there we got Ms. Lisa Waldenberger, Scientific Project Assistant at the University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences in Vienna, representing EcoDALI project. In this case, Ms. Waldenberger will explain the recommendations for the proper implementation of nature-based solution. Unfortunately, Ms. Waldenberger could not make it today on live, but we are pretty lucky as she has sent us a little pre-recorded video in which she will be explaining us which are the main assets that this policy brief is bringing into the scientific overview. And here we have it, I think, already the video prepared. So yeah, as soon as I have green light, I can go ahead. So yeah.
Okay, I'm here to present to you from our EcoDALI project, which is ecosystem-based governance with Danube Lighthouse Living Lab for Sustainable Innovation Processes. EcoDALI is a CSA project under the Horizon mission called Protect and Restore Marine and Freshwater Ecosystems and Biodiversity for the Danube Lighthouse. The project is running until mid-2026, and we have 17 partners and 1 associated partner across 11 countries.
So from this EcoDALI project, I'm presenting to you the policy perspectives on nature-based solutions. There's some insights from our project. My name is Lisa, and I'm a research assistant at Boku University in Vienna, Austria. And this whole task was under Work Package 2, Nature-Based Solutions and Ecosystem Connectivity for the Protection and Restoration of Freshwater Ecosystems and Biodiversity. We had some previous tasks before our policy recommendations were derived. So we went kind of like from research theory to more of like policy actions and recommendations related to nature-based solutions. If you're interested, especially deliverable 2.1 was something that we relied on when we were working on the policy recommendations. So we looked at knowledge gaps, first of all. We looked at what's missing when we look at the research publications and projects, and what's something that might still need some sort of like push. And this is when we got the preliminary policy recommendations, and these preliminary recommendations were validated in 4 expert workshops afterwards. Just a quick reminder on the definition of nature-based solutions. Nature-based solutions are solutions that are inspired and supported by nature. They're cost-effective and simultaneously provide environmental, social, and economic benefits and help build resilience. This is a definition by the European Commission. And in EcoDALI, we looked at societal challenges more focused on water management, biodiversity enhancement, participatory planning and governance, as well as new economic opportunities and green jobs. They were most relevant for our EcoDALI project, just to inform you. Now, looking at the knowledge gaps and needs that we identified, we looked at the co-governance and co-creational aspect of nature-based solutions. We asked ourselves, like, how can governance structures effectively support collaborative decision-making and equitable partnerships? Another question, what are best practices for engaging diverse stakeholders? In our project, we also worked with or organized living labs. We tested different tools for active participation and engagement of different various stakeholders. And we also asked, how do we resolve conflicts between different stakeholders and co-governance frameworks? Looking at the private and public sector for investing in nature-based solution. The private sector plays an important role, and how can co-benefits of nature-based solutions be quantified for investors? How can this become more attractive for the private sector to invest in nature-based solutions? Are there some pilot projects that exist and demonstrate how the positive outcomes of private sector investment in nature-based solutions? And how can economic incentives and subsidies be restructured to get away from the traditional gray infrastructure and favor more the nature-based solution? Monitoring and evaluation of nature-based solutions and the need for data is also something that we identified. What standardized indicators are most useful for assessing the success and impact of a nature-based solution? It's also a question of time and space and a question of scale. How do we assess? How can technology improve monitoring for long-term outcomes? And from here, we then kind of rephrased them into policy recommendations. And I'm just presenting to you some of them, and keep in mind you can read more details in the deliverable. So as I said, nature-based solution require time and space and also a holistic approach to make significant progress towards various EU environmental policies, we need to pull from the same altogether, from the same side. There are different frameworks, different policies out there from the EU. Some might be contradicting. We also realize that conflicting land use is always an issue. Nature-based solution projects need quite a lot of space that might not be there. But if we all get on the same side, we can push together. And therefore, it's also important to promote successful case studies. So showing how successful nature-based solution can be, or how nature-based solution can be successfully implemented, and this can inspire a broader adoption and provide practical models for replication. We should also invest in trainings and education to strengthen the technical and operational skills. We identify that sometimes the knowledge is not quite there yet, so they're hesitant in implementing the nature-based solutions. Another thing is stakeholder engagement. So as I said, how to engage all relevant stakeholders. You have to identify them, and from the planning process to share their knowledge and expertise and provide guidance and recommendations on how to implement nature-based solutions. This is very tricky, and this also can really depend on who are your stakeholders and who are the key players. Another thing is demonstrate the benefits, and especially the quantifiable benefits. Try to find methods we have to find a method to allow the quantification of nature-based solution impacts, the benefits, and the cost effectiveness to make it easier to showcase the value. And the last thing is improving the access to knowledge, data, and financing options to support the development and scaling of nature-based solutions across public and especially across the private sources. Yeah, that's it from my side. I unfortunately was not able to join in person, so therefore this is just a recorded presentation, but I hope you have a fruitful discussion, and feel free to reach out.
So yeah, we are having a really deep discussion, as Mr. Waldenberger has predicted, and we want to thank her once again for being with us, not on live, but at least with this pre-recorded video in which you can explain the work that she's developing in the EcoDAO project. And now we are reaching to the final part of our webinar. In this case, I would like to salute to all of you to Mr. Juan Manuel Revuelta, CEO of the Finnova Foundation, that is about to give us a brief explanation on how EU funding opportunities, or which is the landscape of these EU funding opportunities regarding ocean protection and regarding other aspects and topics we have developed in this webinar. So, Mr. Revuelta, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Thanks all of you. I will be very brief because we are a little bit out of time, and I assume you are a little bit bored. But for Finnova Foundation, that means Foundation for Financing Innovation, is quite important to be thinking in next opportunities. And it's because of that we are going to share some examples and open calls at the moment. I don't know if it's you can see in the screen.
We cannot still see your screen, Mr. Revuelta. Let's see.
Okay, 1 second. It's not allergic to my computer has not allergy to Teams. It's I'm not very smart in doing that. Okay, anyway, in the meantime, I'm going to, I prefer to explain now we are in the right time for the live projects. In the live projects, we have, you know, I'm not going to talk about Horizon Europe because there are a lot of scientifics here, and then there is no sense of doing that. Anyway, then about live program, we are now in an ongoing project that is called Live Costa Adapta, that also is an example, is in the field of climate change and mitigation. And this project, what pretends is to protect the coast, is just an example. Live, the deadline is the next 23rd September. Then we have time enough for not research projects. We are talking of disseminating pilot innovative projects. We have time enough if, from your experience and in these projects, you have identified concrete actions to be taken. Also, we have the circular economy, the circular economy sub-program in life, that is also quality of life. And in fact, there is a call that is governance. That means new legislation that we could implement as a pilot project. Okay? And okay, also we have Live Nature that is funded in up to 75%, and this and we can do concrete things, concrete actions in that field. Also, allow me to explain that we have the program Erasmus vocational training. I'm not talking of the project I'm not talking of the projects for mobility of students, but of projects for new skills, developing new skills for imagine for the people that are working, for example, in the depuration water treatment plants, how to work to put filters or to exchange best practice to recollect the microplastics. We could do that. Anyway, and that will be at the end of November. And finally, allow me to explain that there is an Interreg SUDOE, there will be an Interreg SUDOE call that will be in the field of emergencies. And in the field of emergencies, SUDOE means 3 countries. 3 countries means we can, 3 countries is Portugal, Spain, and Sudoest from France. That means we could present a project if we link these emergent contaminants to emergencies, because in some of the projects it has sense. Okay. For that project, we have just a new project approved that has been writing from the team of Innova, José Manuel Requena, but also Davide. and that is around 1.5 million euros, and we have a project with that the leader is the University of Cádiz, and it's about how new regulation in the field of water management in municipalities can prevent microplastic, but also chemical contaminants in the rivers, because at the end of the rivers end into the sea. And okay, is some of the projects we are working with. The PowerPoint, if someone is interested, we will share with you. And at the moment, we have 67 people following our webinar. What is a lot when we are talking of a very specific problem in this European Green Week. And for the people that will listen us in the future in remote, we are more than happy to try to help in new consortiums as a partners or to identify the new calls of these 3 live calls open up to September. Again, the Erasmus European Vocational Training, we are talking of projects up to 400,000 euros, up to 80% subsidy that will be that we can work not only into Europe, but there is one of the calls that is European Union with Africa, and the other is European Union with Latin America, because it's a global problem, all these emerging contaminants and microplastics. And as most of you, part of you comes from the academia, we are going to disseminate after this event to other entities. And okay, why not this webinar can help us in the networking to identify new solutions, new pilot solutions, new exchange practice as Interreg, or new ways of capacity building for managers of depuration water systems or managers in the governments, regional governments, municipalities, or in the field of the university with the micro credentials. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much, Mr. Revuelta, for your intervention. Yeah, that is fine. So after this intervention, we have reached the very final of our webinar of this One Blue Policy Recommendations and EU Regulation Review webinar, which has been organized in the European Green Week. I don't want to take a lot of time of you because I know we are running a bit late. So basically, I wanted to thank first of all to all the panelists for making a little spot in their schedule to be with us today. Second, I want to thank also to all the attendees that have gathered here with us, and also to all these people, and in particular the IT people from the Foundation that has organized also these teams and has been organizing the other technical aspects, and without them we wouldn't be here able to share all this knowledge towards the same goal we have, that is the ocean protection. So thank you very much for all of you. I wish you a very pleasant rest of the day, and remember that for any kind of inquiry or concern you have, you can find us in the social media of One Blue Project on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and on Twitter. Also, you can find us, and you can just reach out there and ask for anything you need. So have a really nice day and have a good rest of the week, yes. Yeah.
En los últimos 30 años, el aumento del nivel del mar en las costas canarias debido al cambio climático alcanza casi 4 milímetros por año y según las previsiones, en 2100 puede aumentar hasta 30 centímetros. En la búsqueda de soluciones a este problema, el proyecto Life Costa Adapta trabaja en el estudio del fenómeno en San Felipe, creando una solución no agresiva de protección de la costa, mediante un proceso participativo e innovador que integre las necesidades de todos los usuarios. El proyecto cuenta con la financiación de la Unión Europea y de 7 entidades participantes, lideradas por el Cabildo de Gran Canaria. Los trabajos de análisis y propuesta se llevan a cabo por un equipo multidisciplinar perteneciente a estas instituciones, a lo que se suma la contribución de múltiples agentes sociales. Recuperando la cultura de charcos y piscinas naturales tradicionales de Canarias, se trabaja en una solución blanda, construida con materiales innovadores, que aumenten la biodiversidad en el fondo marino y que garantice la protección de las viviendas y el patrimonio local, en convivencia con los usos deportivos existentes en la zona. Para garantizar una participación informada, no basada en bulos ni en prejuicios, sino en análisis y datos científicos, se ha realizado un estudio detallado de San Felipe que abarca múltiples aspectos. Sus resultados arrojan datos importantes para tener en cuenta en la toma de decisiones. Así, por ejemplo, se han identificado valores patrimoniales como la antigua escuela, la iglesia de San Felipe y los yacimientos arqueológicos, que necesitan protegerse ante el cambio climático. También el patrimonio natural marino, algas, moluscos y crustáceos, que con materiales innovadores se puede potenciar su recuperación para fomentar la biodiversidad e incluso recuperar el marisqueo. Y cómo no, su espacio litoral, donde destacan las olas para los deportes náuticos, auténticos referentes internacionales como la ola del Circo y de la playa de Vagabundos. También se identifica población y viviendas en riesgo. El análisis de vulnerabilidad muestra un núcleo urbano con una alta exposición a eventos extremos marítimos, en el que se han identificado 2 zonas con retroceso real de la línea de costa. El análisis de la dinámica costera y el clima marítimo permiten modelar cómo podría ser la forma y las repercusiones de la rotura de olas en estos sectores con las diferentes soluciones. Con esta información de partida, ahora es el momento de aprovechar la oportunidad de construir una solución adecuada que proteja las viviendas amenazadas sin alterar el entorno. San Felipe se posiciona así como referente internacional en el desarrollo de una propuesta integral de adaptación al cambio climático, creando una solución pionera, replicable en otras islas del archipiélago y en el resto de la Macaronesia.